Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Non-Scripted Ramblings. I'm Kendall Richardson. Thank you so much for joining me for my review and reaction to Loki episode 2, The Variant. Gosh, this was a complete change from last week, wasn't it? But in all the right ways. It's just like last week was completely getting the setup, completely getting the Loki variant sort of situation of this, you need to accept your situation. Okay, you've accepted it basically. Now here we go. Let's get into some plot. So this is a very fast-paced episode. So you don't feel the nearly hours long runtime on this one, although it could have gone on and on, because where it ended was just like, oh god, what's gonna happen next? Like, it was sort of like a cliffhanger ending for an episode 2 is just huge. I feel like there's going to be so much story just jam-packed into these 6 episodes, at least into the last 4 going forward, because this episode just had so much happening in it. And yeah, because it moved so fast, it was so well paced. I immediately just wanted, we all did. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who thinks this, but we just wanted what's happening next, what's coming next, like straight away. So 6 days now until episode 3. Bring it on. But yeah, no, I loved this episode, of course. I really, really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. Last week really brought the feels. Hardcore, and it needed to, and it had to, and that was totally fine, and I loved it. And I don't really understand why some people came up against that a bit, had problems with it essentially being a clip show, which I thought was a bit offensive, because no, I don't really think that's what it was at all. But anyway, I think that those clips, the drama of all of that, and Loki accepting what was going to be and what his situation is, I think it was all very necessary. And so now here we are, we have an episode which is very, very funny. Only has like maybe 1 or 2 dramatic beats in it. The main one I'll talk about now is just the moment when Loki is looking through his file, because I loved the whole librarian sort of scene was fantastic. And the only files he's allowed to see are his own. That was literally the file pertaining to him, that she handed him, and it contains obviously his future. And there's a file on the destruction of Asgard, and Loki sees that and reads that, and that's the one moment of the episode where you're like, it just adds again to the complexity of of Loki and his character and who he is, and underneath it all, because you're really starting to get this idea they put up in episode 1 of that it's it's a elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear. It's this illusion that Loki projects to everyone about who he really is and how he really feels, whereas underneath all of that you have this Loki who truly does care about Asgard and about his family. And then we saw that last week, and we see it again in this moment where he's just welling up. He's tearing up over the fact that the place, not the place of his birth, but his home, Asgard, the place where he was raised, for better or for worse. The people he loved, for better or for worse, they most of them died, and the planet was destroyed, and you can see him getting emotional, and I loved it. I don't understand why anyone would think that's disjointed or not. It doesn't land or anything. I think it makes sense, because it's just going to show us who Loki is underneath. There's so many layers to him. There's so many different facets of him that we're really starting to understand. And at the core of it, at the heart of him, I think, is this just just this man who pretends to be a god, or he is a god, but he's really just someone who's in mourning, and someone who even though he never experienced this loss actually in his life, but to know that that's what happened, and to, it's just, I loved the way that they did that. It was a really beautiful scene amidst the comedy, because that librarian scene was great, especially the first part where like Mobius has left him to do this, do all this research and find out what he can, with his own Loki perspective, as he says, and to figure out, what the variant's plan is. So, he's looking through all these files and he's reading these mission reports, and the voice he puts on, like this sarcastic sass, is just, I freaking loved it. The way Tom Hiddleston played it, and he just reads it out loud in this voice, and then his face drops like he just doesn't give a crap, and it's just so funny. I laughed my ass off at that, and the whole, thing too was very cool. And then him trying to charm the other librarian, as it were, just to get at the files about the TVA and the beginning of time, the end of time. It's all classified, and that was one of my favourites of banter of dialogue in this episode. I also like the opening of the episode with just when I say opening, I mean I was going to say the first scene with Loki in it, at Mobius's desk reading the Jet Ski magazine. And Miss Minutes is kind of, tutoring him about the TVA and, what happens, why do the Minutemen have to stop the branches from hitting the red line, and all of that stuff. So it's some clever ways of doing exposition throughout this episode, and I really liked Loki's just kind of mischievous approach to just swatting Miss Minutes. It was very funny. But anyway, the real start of the episode, we have this cold open in Oshkosh, Wisconsin in 1985. I love that reveal of, when it said Wisconsin, I was, and because like the setting is obviously very Renaissance, it's very medieval, it's very like, fantasy, whatever, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But I knew straight away, I'm like, no, this is not going to be, they're going to reveal it to be something else. And as soon as it said Oshkosh, Wisconsin, I was like, okay, this is modern times, basically. So it was 1985. And then we see the Minutemen led by a new hunter, C-20, played by Sasha Lane. And, they're, trying to track down the Loki variant and led into this trap. And the Loki variant mind controls, essentially, Sasha Lane's character, C-20, into fighting the other and killing the other Minutemen, and then she whoops, spoilers for the end. Oh, we all know, we've all seen the episode. The Loki variant takes C-20 through a time door and absconds, but with her. But yeah, it's the whole fight scene was set to "Holding Out for a Hero" by Bonnie Tyler, and man, that song has been having a good week, because not only was it featured in the trailer for the new Guardians of the Galaxy game that is coming out, it was also featured in the Masters of the Universe Revelation Netflix teaser that came out last week, and I think it was used better there than it was here, if I'm honest. Because it was good, but I think it would have been so much better if it had been, with actual, like, Tom Hiddleston Loki in that scene fighting and stuff like that. I would have lost my shit over that. Nevertheless, it was still very good, and I still can't get that song out of my head, so I have to now add it to my Marvel playlist, I think. It was a really good opening scene, I think. I liked it a lot. And then I also really liked, as we're, because obviously the Hunter B-15 and Mobius are like, okay, we have to go to where this, where this variant captured C-20 and all of this stuff. I loved this kind of pre-mission briefing scene where we get, glimpses of different variants of Loki. So there's a frost giant Loki, there's this like Olympian athlete type Loki, a Hulk-like Loki with like just his little head and there's just massive arms. I really hope I got a close-up look afterwards the episode. Someone online zoomed in on the frost giant one and it looks really cool, and like I hope we get to see that in person, because a lot of us OG Loki fans really want to see some frost giant action in this series, and I don't know if we'll get it, and that may be all we'll get. but who knows? We'll take what we can get at this point. It's fine. But anyway, that was cool. And then when Mobius is talking to all the Minutemen about about what, they're looking for someone like Loki that they have there, and that Loki has the ability to do X, Y, Z powers, and he's going through them, and then Tom Hiddleston's Loki chimes in and corrects him and explains a couple of different aspects of Loki's powers and the difference between illusion projection and duplication, and I was just floored. I'm like, yes, let's have some magic Loki in this. We haven't really, even in this episode, we hadn't really have a chance, I suppose, to see him use his magic yet. We got that shot from the trailers of him drying himself with his magic, and I love that scene later on where he did that and he sassed Hunter B-15 because she was like, what is that? And he's like, that was me using magic to dry myself so I don't squeak around with every footstep like the rest of you. I love that little moment. It was nice. And then the thing with the Roomba at the end when he's fighting his I don't want to say himself because it's, a possessed or enchanted person that is masquerading as the Loki variant. They're fighting each other and he summons a Roomba like Thor would Mjolnir, and the joy on his face is just so great. But yeah, so we're starting to get more magic Loki, and I think we'll get more and more as the series goes on, because I watched this interview with Tom Hiddleston. It was either the one I watched today or yesterday. I've been watching a lot. He's been doing a lot of press, obviously, and he did comment on the fact that this series is going to be showing Loki using his magic a lot more, and we got that in the trailers anyway, but I can't wait to see more of it. But this explanation from Professor Loki, as Mobius referred to him as, was just gold, and I loved it, and it really made me so happy, because it's the one thing I've wanted more of with Loki, is his magic abilities to be on display, and this is the beginning of that, so I'm very, very happy. What else? The Loki we kind of get this seed of Loki's ambition and goals, and as I think theorized last week, that he might be turning over a new leaf, or he's actually just going to be playing his own game, and he have an ulterior motive, throughout this whole thing to, break away, like he's not actually on the TVA side, and that's kind of revealed in this episode that that's who he is, but, I think he plays his own game. I mean, he says he does. He's playing his own game with himself, and, he puts off one facade to the TVA, and maybe he's putting off another facade to Lady Loki at the end of the episode of I wanted you to help me take over the TVA and the Timekeepers and stuff. But anyway, I think we got the first seed of that at the beginning when Mobius tells Loki that he could have an audience with the Timekeepers if he plays his cards right. And I'm like, Mobius, why did you tell him that? That's only gonna end badly for you. Because the way he reacted is just like, oh, okay, all right. Well, I'll just add that to my pile of tricks I'm working on. And then when they go to the Ren Fair, and I love this whole kind of sort of villainous monologue he does, just this very kind of mood, atmospheric, kind of dramatic, kind of expositional monologue thing, where he says, that we have a saying on Asgard, where there are wolves' ears, wolves' teeth are near. And I just love the way, yes, he's stalling for time, he's not actually being serious about trying to catch the variant at this point, but I just love this whole scene, and now he starts comparing the TVA to Asgard and calling them idiots, calling them fools and all this stuff, and I really enjoyed just this kind of smarmy sass from him in the scene. And of course Mobius doesn't, believe a word of it, none of them really do, but they're willing, because Mobius is willing to give him the benefit of the doubt in this moment, he lets it go on, and I just really enjoyed that little sequence. It was very, very good. And then there's a couple of cool scenes with I gotta remember how to pronounce her name, So I want to say Ravonna, but I'm pretty sure we hear Mobius say Ravonna, as in Ravonna Renslayer, the judge we saw in episode 1. She makes 2 more appearances in this episode, both in scenes with Mobius. And yeah, they were great scenes. Really, I love the two of their kind of rapport on screens. Really, really nice. And you can really feel the history between them as characters throughout both of their scenes. So I really, really enjoyed. And the one thing I really took away from those scenes with Ravonna is the fact that she's adamant about the timekeepers being heavily involved with this situation, and she's like, I've never seen them so frantic or so involved or so all of this. Like, she's just stressing this fact to Mobius that, you know, this is serious business because the timekeepers are watching all of this stuff, keeping an eye on everything. So yeah, because a lot of people are starting to think that maybe the timekeepers don't actually exist, and I kind of like that theory. Yeah, like I've been seeing a few things online where they're thinking that because Ravonna Renslayer is actually a lover of Kang the Conqueror, who's going to be the villain of Ant-Man 3, that maybe the timekeepers are actually not the timekeepers, and maybe Kang the Conqueror actually, because he has different versions of himself throughout the entire timeline as well, and this could be one version of him who made it to the end of time and created the TVA in this pocket reality to then have his own sacred timeline, which is the way he maybe wants everything to go. I don't know, but that's something that people are talking about, and I think that's kind of an interesting theory. Because again, in this episode we get Loki referring to them as space lizards, essentially, and he finds it so hard to believe in Mobius's way of life and what Mobius believes in the fact that he was created by the TVA to serve the TVA and the timekeepers, blah blah blah. And then I loved how Mobius turned it back on Loki, like, well, how were you born then? How were you created? Who created you? And Loki's, says, I was created by a frost giant on Jotunheim. I was raised by Odin of Asgard. And then Mobius is like, well, see, that sounds ridiculous. That was an interesting little moment as well. But yeah, after this first kind of mission is botched, as Ravonna says, Loki turns into this kind of hyperactive sort of guy that I'm here for. I'm completely loving. Like, I love that scene where he's just running around Mobius trying to basically apologize and explain himself why he acted the way he was. He's like, expect the expected. It's one of the first things you need to know about, trying to catch a Loki is expect the expected, or something to that effect. I thought it was really, really great. And yeah, Tom Hiddleston's having the time of his life. Like, you can really see that throughout this whole episode, and it's just giving me so much joy. It's wonderful. But that's a really interesting kind of, I guess, argument that they have in that moment, is because Mobius at that point is kind of fed up because he feels slighted, obviously, by Loki, because he's like, I stuck my neck out for you, and you wasted time. You wasted the mission. Why should I listen to you now? Like, I don't care. Like, you're just here to fulfill a purpose. You're a means to an end. I don't give a crap what you have to say. And it's just a very interesting change from last week when he was like, I want to know what makes Loki tick. Like, I want to get to the bottom and the core of you, why you are the way you are. And then here now we have Mobius actually saying, I don't care what makes you tick. I'm going to basically, you're literally just here so I can get to the Loki variant, who is a superior Loki to you, and I'm counting on the fact that you can't handle that Loki is superior, and you're not going to be able to, you can't take it. You're going to have to help because you're so proud and arrogant. And he's not wrong. But I'm like, no, you do care what makes him tick, because you need to know that. So you can find the Loki variant. So, the dialogue there was a little, I'm like, oh, they probably could have written that a little better maybe, but I get it. I totally get it. He was just trying to grind Loki's gears, and that whole, at the end when he's like, there are 2 ways that I'm approaching you. Is one, I feel sorry. I see a scared little boy, and you feel kind of bad for that ice runt, he says. Or I'm just going to tell you whatever I want to tell you in order to get my way, basically. And then Loki's like, I don't need your sympathy, and Mobius is like, well, good, because I'm running out of it. That was really, really interesting. So many good scenes between Mobius and Loki in this episode. So many. I mean, the best moments of this episode for me were probably the Loki Mobius scenes. God, what else could I mention? Off of that, okay, so when I talked before about Loki getting emotional over the fact that Asgard's been destroyed, that's when he clicks, because it says on there, no variance energy detected, which means everything went the way it was supposed to. There was nothing abnormal about that moment in time, right? So it clicks with him immediately. He's like, oh, the variant's hiding in apocalypses. And so he runs to tell Mobius, and has one of the funniest scenes of this episode. It's like the librarian scene, it's this scene, and then the Pompeii scene following are the three funniest scenes in this whole episode, and I love them. But I love the fact that he just takes Mobius's lunch. Said, pretend this is Asgard, and then Mobius is like, that's my lunch. That's not Asgard. That's my lunch. Like, it was very funny. And then he just grabs the salt and he grabs the pepper. He's like, this is Asgard about to be destroyed by Ragnarok and Surtur. This salt is me pushing Hulk off of the Bifrost, and this pepper is is me setting fire to the palace. And he's just standing there expositing his theory and going like this. And I know this looks really bad without salt shakers in my hands, so I'm going to stop doing that. Oh God, sorry. Anyway, but you get the idea. And so he's just doing that, and then like he needs to get something to help this analogy, help this metaphor. And so he turns around, and Casey's there. He's like, you. So funny. He grabs his milk, pours it into the salad, much to Mobius's chagrin, and then he's like, and this is Surtur destroying Asgard, Ragnarok, and nothing has changed, and it destroys the salt, and it destroys the pepper in the salad, which is Asgard. So, and I just love the joy on his face and how happy he is when he's like, see this. Do you understand? Like, I'm right about this. This is exciting. He's hiding in apocalypses. And Mobius doesn't really want to believe. But then Loki's like, okay, but one thing you got to know about me is I love when I'm right. So then Mobius, goes for it. They decide to go to an apocalyptic style event, and they go to Pompeii, 79 AD, when Mount Vesuvius erupted and wiped Pompeii from the face of the earth, essentially. It's the funniest thing in this whole episode is this whole sequence. I just love, like, Mobius is so cautious and so just like, all right, well, because he's got thousands upon thousands of years, I'm sure, of training of just, okay, we can't do anything because we'll disturb the timeline, we'll create a branch. Like, he still doesn't fully believe Loki's theory to be correct, to be true. And then Loki, so he's like, do something small, make bird noises. Like, he's just like, oh, screw this. And he runs out into the middle of the street, opens a cart with goats in it and says, be free, my horned friends, be free. And then he just starts, like, waffling on in Latin. Now, at first I thought it was Italian, because obviously Pompeii's in Italy, but he's speaking Latin. And for those who don't know, Tom Hiddleston was actually a classics major at, I think, Cambridge University many moons ago, before his acting career began, and or simultaneously, I guess. And so I read something online that said that this is actually historically accurate Latin that he's speaking, and that gave me such pride and joy, because I'm like, oh, Tom's using his classics abilities in this. It's just very cool. But I loved it how he's just like, you're all about to die, and we're, how I know, because we're from the future. And then he turns to Mobius and is like, we are from the future, aren't we? Like, the Time Variance Authority is futuristic. It's pretty futury, isn't it? Like, I was like, what the I lost my shit. And then and then the Vesuvius explodes, and then he's like, right on cue, and then he just starts saying, everything is meaningless, you know, nothing is of any consequence, dance while you still can. And I'm just like, see this t-shirt? Okay, it says chaos and destruction, and it's just Loki prancing about, and that is exactly what he was in this episode, just having the time of his life. Oh my god, I'm just so happy about it. It was so funny, and he was just, and then Mobius was like, oh shit, there's no energy detected, like no variance energy, we're good, no nexus energy, we're good. And Loki was just like, see, I was right. Oh man, it was great. I loved it so much. Anyway, yeah, it's so good. There's another really good scene with Mobius and Loki after this, and it's the one I mentioned before, when they're trying to Mobius is trying to convince Loki of how ridiculous and chaotic life is, and we just need to make sense of something that doesn't make sense, right, and understand our glorious purpose. He even uses these words against him, which is funny. And Loki says this really cool thing of like, you called me a scared little boy, right? But there's one thing I know that children don't. Mobius is like, what's that? And he says, no one bad is ever truly bad, and no one good is ever truly good. Super wise and super knowledgeable. Yeah, makes sense. Makes total sense, and it tracks with everything going on in this series, and especially with Loki's character, that's for sure. So I thought I really liked that scene, and just the gag of the jet ski, because he was at the start of the scene, he's like, why do you have that magazine on your desk? And then Mobius just goes on about his love for jet skis, and Loki's like, have you ever ridden one? And he's like, well, no, I can't. I mean, that would create a branch for sure, and I'd get in a lot of trouble. And then they just go into this discussion of free will and all this stuff, and the moralities of things, and it's, I really, really liked. And the one thing Loki was like, well, why do you love the jet ski, basically? And he said, well, because it reminds me of what we're fighting for. There's so many things, so many good things in the universe, in this one sacred timeline that Mobius loves, that he's like, okay, I gotta keep fighting for these simple little pleasures, and I really kind of liked that. But yeah, they basically, after the Pompeii scene, they're going, okay, we need to figure out what apocalyptic events the Loki variant is hiding in. And Mobius puts the connection of the kablooey gum from the first episode when they were in France investigating another attack, and and just it narrows their window significantly, because it was only in production apparently from 2047 to 2051, and so they find the perfect apocalyptic event, which is a hurricane that hits Haven Hills in Alabama in the year 2050. And that's when we get these scenes from the trailers that we've seen of Loki in this like department store style building, and and this is where the third act of the show starts, where we get into the nitty-gritty of the finale of this, and this is where we actually get to meet who the Loki variant is. Now I love the banter between, because obviously this Loki variant is using a kind of a mind control ability, which Loki refers to as enchantment, and calls it cowardly, because he's just like, show yourself, like, stop masquerading behind these mortals, like, what are you doing? You're coward, face me, all of this. I love the fact that the Loki variant takes over Hunter B-15, and then she's like, if anybody's anybody, you're me. And then smiles, and then Loki does the same smile back, and he's like, it's nice to meet you. I really like that exchange. And then when the enchantment takes over Randy, That was a lot of fun too, and that's when Loki's like, you know, oh, I'm sick of these games. Now I understand why Thor found this so annoying. I thought that was gold. That was so good. Yeah. Oh man. So then, yeah, and so this is when we get this other, like I mentioned earlier, Loki's kind of, whether it's his true intentions or it's his facade or what he wants this Loki variant to know, as in, like, I stalled for you at the Ren Fair, you know, I want you to help me take over the TVA, you know, overthrow the Timekeepers and take control and all of that stuff, you know, which is the plan that Mobius, you know, quite clearly saw through earlier. But, you know, Loki's doubling down. He's like, no, I want you to help me. And, but the Loki variant's like, no, I've got bigger plans. I'm not going to help you. Yeah, it was very cool. And then they started fighting, and I love the fighting, as I said before. And the one interesting thing was, or two interesting things from this whole thing is, like, one, the Loki variant, you know, is called Loki by the Loki we know, and he just goes, ugh, don't ever call me that. Yeah, and then later on when they're fighting, Tom Hiddleston's Loki says, I would never treat me like this, in a shot that is very reminiscent of the I've been falling for 30 minutes from Thor Ragnarok, which, you know, made me smile quite a bit. That was nice. And yeah, and then we get the, you know, Loki's kind of fed up, and he's just like, what do you want, you know, what are you doing, you know, what is this about, you know, what do you want from me, sort of thing, because clearly the Loki variant's been using in this, you know, it admits openly to using Loki to stall for time, to finish setting all the charges. So these are all the charges, the reset charges that it's been stealing from all these different attacks on Minutemen. So there's dozens of them scattered throughout the Roxcart shopping centre, the, you know, department store. And then, yeah, we get the reveal of Lady Loki. Or is it Lady Loki? Because me and a lot of other people are of the belief that it's not actually Lady Loki. And if it is Lady Loki, then I'll just have to get over the fact that she has blonde hair, because if there was one thing that pissed anyone off on the internet last night, it was the fact that she's blonde. Because, you know, Loki's black hair. Lady Loki, black hair. And Marvel Studios have been pretty consistent with their, you know, adaptations of characters in terms of their appearance. Like, they've done a pretty good job of representing the appearance of these characters faithfully, you know, so it's I think this is done on purpose, because they don't do anything for nothing. You know, everything kind of means something. So I think the fact that she's blonde is notable, especially going along with the entire theory that, you know, she is actually Sylvie Lushton, aka the Enchantress. Because in the credits at the end, in one of the foreign language dubbing credits, she's actually mentioned as being Sylvie, not the variant, or not Lady Loki or anything like that. It says Sylvie. So there's that, and yeah, the fact that Enchantress in the comics had blonde hair. She was Sylvie Lushton modeled her appearance from the first Enchantress, Amora. So Sylvie was created by Loki, by Lady Loki specifically, which is also worth noting, I suppose, maybe because there's another theory, I think, that it's an amalgamation of both Sylvie and Lady Loki. I don't know. So she could just have created herself how she wants to create herself, maybe. I don't know. Loki is a shapeshifter, after all, can do what they want. Yeah, so basically, yeah, Sylvie was given great mystic powers by Loki when Loki created her as a tool for chaos in the comics. So, yeah. So that also kind of maybe suggests that this Lady Loki / Sylvie is maybe even working for a Loki, like whether that's an actual Lady Loki or a Tom Hiddleston looking Loki that's actually another variant and evil and all that. I don't think that's going to be the case. But I mean, it would explain why they're revealing her so soon in the show, because that's very curious as well to have this reveal in episode 2. I did not think this reveal was coming this soon, but again, as I said at the top, this is a very fast-paced episode, very plot-heavy, very plot-driven, so it's no surprise that they're going bam, 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 let's go, let's get into this. So there's that, and there's another thing that kind of points to maybe the fact that it is actually Lady Loki, is because apparently in the comics Lady Loki could possess her victims. She had that power, different to the main Loki that we know. So that's interesting, because everyone was also like, well, you know, Loki can't mind control people, so it's not a variant of Loki, and which speaks through being the Enchantress, but then because, like, you know, Loki could only, in Avengers, he could only do the mind control thing with the help of the Mind Stone in the scepter, so so there's all these different ideas kind of pointing to if she is Lady Loki, or is she Sylvie, or is she both of them combined into this new kind of character, which also wouldn't be surprising too, I guess, because the MCU has kind of formed their own version of the comic timeline, the comic history. Things have been changed around, certain characters moved around into different events, so who knows what this could be. I just really wish she'd have been a brunette. I really do, but that's okay. It's really nice to finally meet Sophia DiMartino, who, you know, I've known for a while now was going to be in this, because there were set photos from this episode, and next week's episode, I think, kind of leaked, that, you know, showed her in it. And she was at the London premiere with Tom Hiddleston for Loki last week. So, but she just has one line, and she just answers Loki's question, just says, "This isn't about you." And then she walks through a time door, and as all the charges are going off, and Loki decides to follow instead of listen to Mobius and not follow, which I think made more sense for him to go than stay, because, I think he's more interested in what his other self is up to, and that's probably got more chance of furthering his end game goals, to pardon the pun, you know, if he goes through than if he was to stay. But the really cool thing, like, that's where the episode ends, and that's insane. I was like, no, give me more, need more, you know, give me more. But the really cool thing to note right at the end is the fact that these charges have basically destroyed the sacred timeline, blown it up, as it were. So we cut to the TVA, and we see all these branches coming off of it and everything, and these monitors are showing these lists of all these places where all these Nexus events are occurring. And I just wanted to mention a couple of them now. Of course, up top there is a number of Earth-related locations here, which makes sense, but there's also a lot of MCU locations that we visited in the past that are mentioned, starting with Vormir, which of course we know is the home of the Soul Stone, in the year 2301, so that's in the future. Asgard in 2004. We have Ego, as in Ego the Living Planet from Guardians Volume 2, in the year 1382. Titan, Thanos' homeworld, in the year 1982. Xandar as well, in the year 1001. So, there's a few cool little... I don't know if those places are going to come into, you know, this main storyline. I have a feeling Vormir will, just because from the trailers we've seen this kind of desolate planet that's purpley, and Vormir was very purpley in Endgame and Infinity War. So, and of course there was that one moment where I thought I saw Natasha, and a lot of people thought they did, but I think it's actually Lady Loki, or Sylvie, whatever we want to call her, because the hair's blonde, so that matches now. So I think that's who that is, but it looks like Vormir. So I think that's going to happen. I think we're going to go to Asgard because there is a shot in the trailers of basically Thor 1 looking Loki in his get-up on the throne. So that looks like that might happen. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? It's all very exciting. And I guess maybe this is even the creation of the multiverse. Maybe. I mean, it's very clear now that this show is going to be directly playing into not just WandaVision, but Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and even potentially Spider-Man No Way Home. So with all of these multiverse things happening, I think this is, you know, for some reason, Lady Loki's plan was to create a multiverse maybe, and I don't know what her end goal is of this whole thing. We won't know, I suppose, until the show's done. But it's very fascinating, very interesting, and I just noticed I've been talking for 40 minutes. Holy crap. Didn't think this episode was going to go that long. Sorry, everyone. I just have a lot of thoughts and a lot of things to say. But yeah, one other thing I didn't mention is that they found Hunter C20, and she apparently told Lady Loki where the Timekeepers actually are. So, yeah, so that's also very interesting. Does that mean she's also going to go over the time for the Timekeepers, even though she said, you know, she didn't want to do that with our Loki? So, who knows? But yeah, really interesting episode, fantastic episode, a lot of fun. I laughed a lot. It was very enjoyable, very fast paced, and I cannot wait for next week to see what the hell's happening, because it's just so what the hell at the moment. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed my review, ramble, reaction to episode 2 of Loki, the variant. So stay tuned for next week. I'll be back with my thoughts on episode 3, of course. Cannot wait for that and to see where this goes. Only 4 episodes left now. Sad face. Alright, thank you again so much. Until next time, I've been a Kendall Richardson, and you've just experienced non-scripted ramblings.